But if you were to do it on your own, the ROI on that compared to we can only go this fast, we can only do 10 days, is because we went the long way around for, 10 to 15 years. Because when you just focus on the work and don't focus on anything that looks like work or feels like work or sounds like work, then 10 days is actually a long time. Okay, in this video, I'm going to break down our 10-day brand sprint. Now, we have 3 different types of sprints that all run on the same rails. The first one is called a brand focus. This is for people who, let's say, they got a brand, but they just want to make it work harder. So the feeling that most people would say is, oh, I just want my stuff to work harder. I wish my assets could just do more things or just help tell the message that we want to do. So we can come in and just focus some of those things, tidy those things up. Next thing is a push, which usually, so brand push is more about saying, look, the logo is great. It got us to this point, but now we're got another round of investment. Maybe we're trying to scale. We're trying to enter new markets. We're trying to grow, and actually, it's kind of lagging. So we need to keep the logo and change the rest, if that makes sense. So we can push that. And then the other one is brand new, which is essentially blue sky thinking, usually happening around about the time where maybe you're kind of consolidating for growth, or you've hit success phase and you're bringing in C-suite, you're bringing in new people, and the old brand just isn't quite there. And you need to govern people on an idea at scale. So that's like a brand new thing. But what we promise in our brand focus or our brand push and our brand new is that the reason why we have a 10-day sprint is that we live in a world that moves very quickly now. There's no point in waiting around. Any brand that's got a plan, these 20-year plans, these 10-year plans, let's have a 90-day plan. Let's have a 12-month plan if you're in enterprise cycles or software updates and so on and so forth. But minimum, I say 2 to 3 years, because in 2 to 3 years, the world's changed. So what we do is our done for you service is about essentially starting the conversation. Because if you start a conversation, then that makes you ask a lot of questions. It's those kind of questions that lead to kind of sparking change. So here we deliver first stage creative for brand focus. So they can usually, if they want that, you guys have got an in-house team. You've got the infrastructure. You just need a bit of the consulting. You can't take your eye off the mission, or the day-to-day. So you just want kind of a consulting thing to come in, done for you, use the expertise, and then you can validate it with your ICP and execute it. A brand push, again, you've probably got an in-house team. Maybe you've brought in some new leadership. Maybe you've got a new creative director and you wanted some fresh stuff. But, freelancers are a bit hit and miss. Agencies, they want to build out the whole thing. They want to be part of the whole end-to-end idea. Not many people just do first stage creative because, often it's quite NDA'd. It's very behind closed doors, let's say. A lot of it doesn't work. A lot of it changes and evolves. So it's hard to have that clout. You have to rely on relationships rather than maybe case studies. And then for the brand new, obviously you're coming in, you're giving away, we like to give away our ideas and just to help companies do stuff. So we're just really into branding. And these are the 3 buckets that we feel really kind of allow us to tell the story and deliver a service in 10 days that really works. So there are 3 buckets. Now, what I'm going to do is break down the 10 days. So we start so all 3 packages run on the same rails, essentially. So we start all ideas, all brand sprints, day 1, morning of, hopefully, if we can align on timeline, is a director's workshop. Director workshop. Apologies for my handwriting and probably spelling. Now here, we get everyone in a room. So decision makers, people with yes power, 3 to 4 people in with us 2, and we take it through. Essentially, we've got 8 interactive workshops. And the idea is we work on helping you verbalize what you're doing. So one of the workshops is called a 1-word problem. The next one is burning desire. The 1-word problem, essentially, can we distill what you do? Can you have a dominant problem? Maybe there's some recessive problems that exist. If you think about it in terms of like DNA, maybe there's a major thing you solve and then almost a signal that's around that. We talk about how can we start to pair some of these ideas with the visual stuff? So once we've got that verbal idea, how can we then, that wibbly wobbly confused stuff, we start to verbalize what the brand does and what you solve and what your offer is. How can we then start to pair that with the visual, and how can those two things start to work in tandem and work closely together? Now, we have a lot of mood boards, some quick fire rounds just to get a taste of it. At no point are we suggesting big structural brand strategy phases. We've been through those things. We understand that they exist at a very large enterprise corporate level, and they take a long time and they cost a lot of money. We are in the business of creating creative ideas, creative sparks, creative strategies for almost things to go off and validate and to test. So we can create that value, understand it, articulate it, and then go test it, and then go put it into research, or we can build it out with our team, or we can run little campaigns or do little ideas, like low risk. It's all about low risk. And I think maybe what the design world could learn from, or the branding world and brand agencies could learn from, is a little bit more of that MVP, a little bit more of that Silicon Valley startup mentality. But I think they're two worlds, a more operator world versus kind of technician world, if you've read E-Myth. So anyway, we come out with that. And what we like, once we go through all these different workshops, I won't go through them all now. At the end of the workshop, we come away with a little brand sprint. So it's like a little sprint print that we like to, it's just got all your little information, all the words that we've done. We build it together in the workshop, very interactive. Some of the mood board stuff that you've got, some of the connections, how we can start to maybe pair this with that and pair that with this. And, oh, this could manifest in that way. What if we tried that? What about this? What about that? Sort of things like that. And some of these things, it means that you don't have to take notes. Obviously, we send you the notes, but this can start to be, you can action this in your business from day one. So that's 3 hours. There's no way we can make it shorter. We've tried. It doesn't go, if we cut stuff out, it's not as valuable. And if we make it longer, then it's taking up too much director level time. So day one is director workshop, and then we go off and take all that feedback. So day two is all about looking for opportunity in the market. So opportunity, we call it an opportunity audit. Gosh, my handwriting's terrible. If you imagine, we'll have got a lot of data, and we find a lot of signal, and there'll be a lot of noise, and maybe there'll be something over here, maybe there'll be a territory over here, maybe there's something over here. Almost think about those like landmarks that you can see from afar, that we can sort of begin to be like, oh, I can already see a little creative route or a little idea. We should lean into that. They mentioned this, they mentioned that, he mentioned this over here. So can we start to almost make these flagship ideas that are beginning to manifest as little routes? We'll spend time on that. So next one would be touch points and territory. So day two, we're just focusing on like, what is the ownable landscape that we can own? So a little bit of positioning, taking that brand essence stuff that we learned from the workshop and trying to find, what's our valuable resource? How can we start to tell that story from an ownable space? How can they start to almost manifest? And how can we tell those stories? So if we have a territory that feels ownable or something worth exploring, what are the core touch points that could explain or help facilitate that message? So let's just say, if you are a brand and you are very much about decentralization, let's say Bitcoin is rebranding, but the key story or the way in which they'd facilitate that message would be, how is the white paper displayed? How is some of the value explained? How do we talk about that? That would be the white paper of Bitcoin, or just Michael Saylor in general, would be a great area in where we could find a lot of value to pick out stuff to, whether that would work in content, whether that would work in brand language, how we talk, tone in which we articulate, where we educate, where we help that value gap, how we cross that value gap between the ICP and the kind of reality and expectations. So we begin to look at all of those territories and touch points. That's day two. Day three is where we go full creative speed runs. So I'm borrowing speed runs from, I guess, Minecraft, even though I've just played it, but I love creative speed runs. And that is essentially taking our ideas and we just future cast it as much as possible. So what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Taking the key touch points, where can we tell that story? How would that manifest? Obviously, we start to look at colors. We start to look at typeface, but usually territories only, top level. So let's say, we want to, if you're more of a challenger brand, and we'd find you a big, bold typeface, and then you want to pair that with maybe a, let's say if you want to be also very human or approachable, maybe there's a more of a kind of readable. So you've got a usability thing. So we can be bold in our headlines, but we also have to be very user-friendly in the way in which we facilitate or deliver information. So we can start to look at those kind of things. So then we can start to look at photography. What's your people's, places, things? How do you create your ideas? How do you articulate that? How do you find things in your photography that become ownable assets, or whether it's a grade, whether it's a way in which you take photos? What is the style of which you use to do that? So we're always constantly looking in these speed runs for for ownable ways in which to communicate value and tell stories. That'll be our first week. Then we break for the weekend. We always do this in a 10-day sprint from Monday to the following Friday. Why? Because we love to have a weekend in between where we go and live our lives, hang out with our family, and have a laugh. And what happens is, I really do believe that in this little wibbly wobbly subconscious time of sleeping and relaxing, all of this stuff here is just sort of ticking over. I don't know, same as you probably have notes in your phone of little copy ideas, little hooks, little way to tell the stories. Like I'm wired that way. And that's sort of how we built it, is to facilitate a little bit of downtime. And then, so day 6, we come in and we have a fresh eyes. We believe in the power of fresh eyes. We have a fresh eyes kind of keep craft kill situation where we just work out what's working, what's good, what do we not like, what's got legs, what we'll be really excited about the week before that now is a bit like, ooh, this is all style, no substance, there's no ideas. So that would be day 6. Day 7, what it is all about the shortlist. So we, as I mentioned before, we've got everything from the week before. We've gone through our ideas. We've got all of our interesting bits. Now we start to build that. Okay, so now we've got to execute that, because we deliver 2 routes to be able to validate where you want to go with a brand, or start the conversation that you need to have. And they're all going to start. They all have a certain amount of touch points. So we have a little brand snapshot for each one. They all will fit that because they're done for your service. So we'll deliver you that allows you to sort of then have everything you need to either pitch it to your leadership team, to excite your in-house team, or to then, if you want to, roll out to a third-party agency if you want to, once all the creative's done. So we'd start to look at the shortlist ideas, kind of creating the framework, I suppose. On day 8 is all about storytelling. So what will happen usually is, when you've done creative, you'll have a really great idea. You'll have all of the language and all of the color palettes. You'll have some mood boards and some territories, and everything starts to come together. And that'll be great. But what will happen is probably you just need to sort of bookend it here. Maybe you need to bookend it here. Maybe there just needs to be an overarching strategy. Well, there definitely needs to be an overarching strategy, but there's an overarching strategy that then will facilitate into both the 2 routes. We're not giving 2 separate strategies. We're taking the sprint print and the sort of data and signal that we got from the workshop, and we're funneling that into our best guesses, channeling that into that strategy, and then they execute as 2 routes. So then usually what happens is we just have to make sure that story, we bookend that story correctly. And if you imagine a PA desk, so let's say we might dial up this aspect, or we might dial up that aspect. So no point are we getting rid of something, or are we just introducing something just to kind of make the route work? We're constantly thinking about what is that story and how are we delivering that message, because we might not be there to pitch it. We can be there, but we might not be there to pitch it to the leadership team or further down the line. So we want to equip the directors we work with the confidence to start that conversation, but also with the work, so they don't have to. The great thing about a done for you service is that it is delivered to your desk with minimal risk. You don't have to take your afterball, especially if you're scaling, right? So if you've done a brand push, let's say, which is the most common, like in you're trying to scale, you're just got Series B or transitioning from that, you're bringing in C-suite, you're bringing in new leadership, you're expanding into teams, you're expanding into new markets, you're trying to grow. Having, brand is a real tool for performance done well and done right. That's why we've existed. That's why it's a great, but you don't, sometimes you don't need it for the first, you can get by on a very good product. I would encourage you only really focus on the product and the customer here. But it's when you start to build that ecosystem, and that ecosystem at scale. So when people start to come into that ecosystem from many touch points, this looks a little bit like sperm and egg, doesn't it? When people start to enter that, they know where they are. They can see some flagship ideas. They can see some landmarks. They can start to, whether or not you own the color, whether or not you own the language, the way in which they know that they're in that ecosystem, and they can spend time in that ecosystem. That's the emerging from a successful business is emerging as a successful brand is sort of around that stage. And we understand that. And that's why we really want to make sure that what we deliver, there is a story that can be articulated with or without us being in the room. So that's day 9 is all about focusing on that. And then we finalize the deck. Day 9, we essentially just finalize everything. We make sure that the assets are good, anything we've made, so we can send it to you. We're not sending you artworked assets. We don't artwork stuff. We're not sending you specifications and guidelines. Anyone who does that after a 10-day sprint, I believe, doesn't really know what they're doing. You need to sit with an idea. You need to stress test it. You need to test it with your team. You need to take your 1,000 super fans or whoever your ICP is, and then you need to workshop it. You need to incentivize those things. Like, if we do this and you did that, how do you feel? Is it better than this? Is it better than that? You need to do forms. Like, it needs to be data-led. It can begin. If it's data-led from the beginning, it can be slightly stale. Optimization is a lot easier than transformation. But if it begins in a gut and an idea and an understanding and an insight, like, we do this for a living. We've done this for a combined experience of 24 years, 15 just talking about me. And that gut it's not really a gut anymore. There is you do see patterns, you do understand it. And then you take that gut feeling and then you validate it with data. If you just start with data, then sometimes it can just be like, this works, and it becomes very tactics, not strategy, or kind of operations, not creative. Not a problem, but just not what the offer that we sell. And then, so we really want to, rather than focus on the guidelines, it's all about sentiment, rather than kind of this must go here, that kind of stuff. The guidelines are dead as soon as you hit export. Whereas if you create this living idea that is evolving and you've got an in-house design team that probably just needs to take it and run with it, that's often what I've found working with in-house, is that they're really shit hot, but they got the job because they cared about the mission here. So suddenly having to dust off let me think about completely different things, that can be quite hard. It can also take time, organization. The great thing is a done for you thing over here. We finalize everything for you. We do all the creative stuff. But if you were to do it on your own, the ROI on that compared to, okay, right, we need a project manager. We need to find who's available, who's a pod. Okay, we need a copywriter. Oh, this lady's away, so we need to get this guy in. Okay, so now we need to review this. Right, we have to have 2-3 internal meetings. We're also trying to do everything over here. Oh God, we've got a campaign. Just, dollars, pounds, wherever you are. Compared to, hey, look, we've got a discretionary budget of, X, Y, Z, and we want to deploy it to ask some questions that could change the game. Or they might not. We might scratch the itch and realize it's terrible. And that's the opportunity that we've seen in the market. And that's why we spend the 10 days really thinking about it, and then we finalize it into a story. Then that was a bit of a tangent, wasn't it? And then the final idea is on the 10th day, we get everybody in a room. It has to be everybody who was in the workshop, and it can be sometimes C-suites or founders can join in. But on day 10, it's the handover. And it's usually a 60 to 90 minute presentation where we pitch everything to you, take you through that story. And we just understand, we recap where we were, the decisions we did here, we tell that story, talk about the overarching strategy, and then maybe all the touch points, and get you very excited about the next steps. After that, what happens next? You can stress test it, you can argue, you can put it into research, you can only use half of it, you can only use one bit of it, you can get us to go again and do a different aspect of it. The one thing, this is a done for you service, so we don't, we're not going to go in and revise the stuff. You're buying our expertise. But what I've found is that everybody gets very excited, and then everybody has that enthusiasm because, you've got the work without the effort. You've saved time because we've done all the work for you. And again, we can only go this fast. We can only do 10 days is because we went the long way around for, 10 to 15 years. And we've been through this process so many times. We've noticed patterns and just tried to gut everything out, because when you just focus on the work and don't focus on anything that looks like work or feels like work or sounds like work, then 10 days is actually a long time. So that's our 10-day process. If you can't work with us, if you're not in a position to work with us, then why don't you try and do that process on your own? You get your in-house team to do that, or if you're a solo guy or bootstrapping, go for it. Any questions, let me know. We're all ears. And And if you want to hear more, let's talk. Thanks very much.